Now, we're turning our attention to Cayman CrossTalk's district debates. Today, we bring you the 6th of 19 debates. Hosting myself, Barry Quape, and also I have from the newsroom, we have Kevin Morales as well. And so the two of us are hosting Mario Ebanks from the district of West Bay West. And I'd like to thank this independent candidate for joining us this morning. We did extend an invitation to his opponent, McKeeva Bush of the Cayman Democratic Party, and he declined. Every candidate receives an invitation to join us for these debates and answer our questions, which were generated through input from the Compass newsroom, political analysts, and you, our audience members. Joining us from the Cayman Compass this morning is Kevin Morales, and he will explain the rules of the forum. Kevin?
Good morning, Barry. Good morning, Mr. Ebanks. Thanks for being here. So normally the rules of the debate would go like this. A candidate would be asked a question and have 2 minutes to answer that question, and the other candidates present would have the opportunity to then chime in and say, hey, I'd like to answer that question as well. Obviously, Mr. Bush is not here, so essentially we're going to be asking you a new question, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond to those questions, whether they're from us or from the public through social media, etc. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And that's how we'll continue through for today.
I'll ask you a question. Will I get his time as well to answer? So I have more time?
You know what? We haven't discussed that yet.
The time's all yours.
Yeah.
Just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Well, because you participate, and obviously I think all of our listeners would echo a similar sentiment in that this is a democracy. Right. And debate is a part of the democracy.
Yes.
So I think the reflection on candidates when they don't show up is quite obvious to the electors. But good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Your first question here. In your opinion, what is the most important issue for your voters in West Bay West, and how will you address it if elected?
Before I answer, let me just first say that were you really surprised that Mr. Bush didn't show up this morning? He always does this. He goes around throwing mud, twisting the truth in the neighborhoods, in his public meetings, which is not very well attended, by the way. He brings everybody from the three of his team members and still has a small crowd, but he's going because people are sick of him. People are turned off. And so he doesn't want to come to face me at CrossTalk or probably at the Chamber of Commerce debates either, but he wants to go around throwing mud, dividing the country, telling things that are not true and trying to twist the facts and write the facts. And so it's a disappointment that he disrespected you, Barry, and CrossTalk and the Compass and all ladies in this country because his running mate, Captain Eugene Ebanks, did the same thing last week against his opponent, Ms. Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes, who is a wonderful young lady who is going to win in West Bay Central, by the way, is my prediction. And I am going to win in West Bay West, is my prediction. But, you know, we have to raise the debate in this country to a higher level. For too long, we have talked about personalities. We've talked about treating, what you can do for me. What have you done for me lately? What about what can you do for the country? Not for yourself, for the country. And so this is what I bring to this campaign. This is why I came back out from, quote unquote, political retirement since I ran in 2005 and didn't get elected, because enough is enough. 36 years is too long. It's time for him to go. And it's time for West Bay West to elect someone who's going to be there, who's ready, credible, and competent. Now, to your question, one of the issues that I'm very keen about is a long-term development plan for this country. Driving into Georgetown this morning from my lovely district of West Bay and seeing whatever is left to see of the wonderful 7 Mile beach, which they have blocked off a large section of that, to they meaning the UDP when Mr. McKeeva and his running mates were in power. So you can hardly see any of the West Bay beautiful beach now. But looking across, the one remaining piece that we had that was part of the National Roads Authority, the NRA agreement, was where the public beach used to be, the entrance to the Governor's Harbour used to be, where now is the Kimpton and New Public Beach. And there was a little piece, a small strip of grass that was left there under the NRA agreement for a camping area for Caymanians, because Caymanians traditionally go to the beach for camping on Easter. And as part of the NRA agreement, they say we're going to have, you can't go on the beach anymore. We're going to change the sand from white Caymanian sand to golden sand that they brought from somewhere else. And they got a nice parking area now, and they got a little playground. But the area for camping was supposed to be that grassy area between the road and the development. all West Bears, all people crossing there this morning. You will see heavy equipment there. You will see the soil being turned up and large mountains of soil, preparing for a new project, the Indigo Hotel. And I am going to get more details on that, but it is another thing. So my plan, the plan of myself and my committee and all people everywhere who want to see a better Cayman Islands, is to have a development plan for this country that looks at the long term. I'm calling my plan Vision 2050. We had Vision 2008. My plan is Vision 2050. We're going to look at the environment, carrying capacity, social issues, cultural issues, economic issues, population growth, and looking at everything. And so that, I think, is one of the biggest issues facing this country. There are many other issues as well, things like cost of living, things like education and training, right? But the long-term development of this country and the plan for the future is something that we get that right and bring all of those pieces together, we will have a wonderful future. And so there's no longer the time for short-term gain, for long-term pain. Regardless of what Mr. McKeeva and his surrogates want to say, my plan is now, has always been, long-term interest of this country. That's why I left my job, my good job, and came in this campaign. And if I'm elected, I'm going to serve, and serve well. But I'm talking about the long-term, the children, the grandchildren, and those yet unborn, not just those who are here now.
Kevin, next question.
Mr. Ebanks, just along those same lines, there's been, as you know full well, there's been quite a bit of development in your neck of the woods as well. If you drive up Northwest Point Road from West Bay Public Beach up to, the Turtle Farm, Macabuca, you can see lots of new either homes or developments that will be rented out. What is your development plan for your district in particular? And I understand what you're saying about the public beach area and the 7 Mile Strip area, but what about right in your own backyard? Do you have a development plan for that area?
Wonderful question. Kevin, you and I live in Northwest Point. I've been a resident of Coral Gables for the last 28 years, and during that time, for 25 years, I was the chairman of the Homeowners Association. You remember, and you and your family are wonderful residents of Coral Gables as well. You haven't been there 28 years yet, but hopefully you will be. When you drive along Northwest Point now, Northwest Point Road is becoming the new Gold Coast. A lot of development, a lot of traditional homes are being removed and rebuilt. And I said to someone yesterday, I was at a funeral yesterday afternoon at the Wesleyan Holiness Church, or Saturday afternoon. And I said that you can hardly see the sunset now because some of those tall buildings are blocking out even the sunset, the beautiful sunset. So again, Kevin, that issue of along Northwest Point Road and throughout 7 Mile Beach, I am not in favor of 20, 30-story condos or hotels, unlike my opponent, Mr. McKeeva. You remember in his Christmas message in December 2018, he proposed in writing and in the radio and probably on TV, 30-story buildings. Can you imagine 30-story buildings dotting 7 Mile Beach, dotting Northwest Point Road, dotting everywhere in this island? No, Mr. McKeeva, no 30-story buildings. 36 years is enough, but no 30-story buildings. So, Kevin, beach access along Northwest Point Road is also another issue. If you drive along there when you go home this evening, when you make that corner going into Turtle Farm Road, about a half a mile to your left, look at a sign that says beach access and look to see whether you can get into that area. So beach access and the panoramic view of our country, we had to try to maintain. Now, it would have been good if when we were doing this plan in the 60s and 70s, as the Honorable Benson Obadiah Ebanks and his government tried to do, a proper plan where if we had, imagine this, if we had had the road, right, the main road going along the coast, and you had walking track on the side, and you had the beach beyond that and the sea, and on the other side of the road you had the hotels and whatever, it would have been so much better. We didn't do that. Mr. Benson wanted to do that, but he lost his seat in 1976 after doing a 1972 development plan. If we had done that, we would have been much better off today. But sometimes we don't. We have 2020 vision. I'm trying to do a 2050 vision and see what we can do to make things better, to build back stronger.
Well, and I think that one of the things a lot of people may not know about you, but they should know about you, is you are a Bank of America scholar, you are a Deloitte scholar, and you've also had leading universities as well as the Disney Institute and World at Work Professional Society. Your background is actually almost incredible. It's like, is this one person or three? But we do have to take a short pause. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Cayman CrossTalk, everyone. In the studio here with Kevin Morales for our district debate with Mario Ebanks of West Bay West, as the incumbent, Mr. McKeeva Bush, refused to come on the program this morning. Turning our attention now, if I can, to healthcare. Mental health and drug abuse is an increasing concern among our youth in Cayman. What policies would you introduce to address this problem?
Thank you, Barry. Before I answer, let me just also thank you for your kind remarks before we took the break about my credentials. Anybody who wants to read more about that can get in touch with our campaign, and also we have a website that's being finalized that has more details on all of my credentials and my service in the community, my service in government boards, my employment, and also my commitment to the society and the community. But to answer your question about mental health, this is a major issue that is amongst us. And especially in West Bay, we see it. I must commend the government for finally working on a mental health facility which is being done in the eastern districts. We want to make sure that if we are elected, we prioritize that and prioritize mental health. Because these individuals need to be able to have the full potential. And individuals walking around on the streets, or those who are depressed, those who are melancholy. Sometimes you don't know who's actually had mental health issues, and it expresses itself in different ways. I am an HR professional, and in the workplace, one of the things that an HR professional does is keep an eye on psychology of people and behaviors, and tries to also direct resources to that area. And so in the workplace, people come into the workplace sometimes with issues. And you think that they're just being, there is poor work ethic or they're lazy, but sometimes they bring a lot of baggage with them, and some of that is mental baggage. You have to be able to recognize it. And that's why, in my plan, we're going to, and I'll talk more about this later on, we're going to move away from the existing Labor Department and work and create a Human Capital Development Authority. And that's going to be an authority that deals with all matters dealing with labor, training, workplace relations, and in that will be obviously health and wellness. Health and wellness is very important because in my previous organization that I just resigned from at the end of February, we still have a health and wellness program that we negotiated with the insurance provider. That helps to identify issues, provide awareness in the workplace, and address mental health issues as well, especially after the pandemic. It's said now in the US that they're seeing a surge after COVID of mental health issues. Mental health issues are mushrooming. So that's in the workplace. In the community, outreach organizations, the churches, and making sure that there's a facility, and there's also the law, the mental health law, is strengthened so that people can actually be referred to proper care. Because you know how it is now. If the individual doesn't agree, you can't put them in.
Exactly.
So we need to deal with all those things. We need to address these things. Gone are the days when we can look at breaking ground and putting down concrete and doing 30-story buildings like Mr. McKeeva wants to do. We've got to address some of these social issues. In going through the community for years, but especially the last few weeks, I've heard a lot of issues around NAU, Needs Assessment Unit, elderly care, mental health, and I'm committed to addressing the mental health issues, working with my colleagues across these islands, from the White Caps of West Point in West Bay to the cliffs of the bluff in Spot Bay, Cayman Brac, working together to bring solution. Because if our people are not prepared for their full potential and lose hope, the country is in a mess.
And I think a lot have. From my perspective, I'm seeing people who are hopeless. They don't know where to turn, and certainly standing in the hot sun at 72 years old to try and get relief from NAU is the stories that I'm being told right now. And it's a shame that here in the Cayman Islands that it even happens, and that the ageism is as rampant as it is. Kevin, your question?
Sure. If you don't mind, I'll stick with the topic of healthcare. it's not in your specific district, Mr. Ebanks, but there is a new hospital slated to be developed and built in West Bay. I'm just curious if your thoughts on that new hospital and your thoughts generally on the kind of new niche medical tourism pillar of the economy that seems to be continue to be developed and pushed through.
Yeah. I'll speak about medical tourism generally. Kevin, I don't know enough about that particular project or whether they have what it's all about. I know what it is generally, but I don't know enough details. I wouldn't be surprised, though. I wouldn't be surprised if my friends have also afforded them some serious, huge incentives and tax concessions for that project. But that, like I said, I don't know enough about it. In terms of medical tourism and sports tourism, but let's talk about medical tourism, I think that we need to diversify our economy. The whole issue with the Shetty Hospital was to look at medical tourism, so bringing in people from overseas to get medical attention here. They will also would stay here, they'll recuperate here, and maybe they'll buy property here as well within a certain price range. That Health City Shetty project has more morphed into a general hospital and offering a lot of good services, but also competing against HSA and against Doctors Hospital. And the medical tourism part has not worked as best as possible, largely too because of COVID, travel restrictions. So I support medical tourism. I think we need to look at putting together a group of people to look at all aspects of this. And later on, I'll tell you about an idea that I have in our campaign for a think tank to look at issues around the economy, a kind of an economic summit, as my brother George keeps calling it. Look at all these things, how we can look at medical tourism, sports tourism, the green energy, the green technologies, and making sure that our tourism industry is sustainable. Sustainable is a very important word, and also that the financial industry is protected locally in terms of having good people, but also globally protected from those who want to take the business away. So medical tourism is a big part of that whole menu of economic pillars.
Well, and I think we do have a viewer WhatsApp that's just come in here. I'd like to jump to that if I may. Good morning. I had a query. Do you feel that religion should be separated from LA? I guess they're referring to Legislative Assembly, formerly now Parliament. And then the second question on that is, that would conflict on cases like same-sex marriage. Where do you stand on this topic?
Yes, I am a Christian. I've always been. I'm not perfect, but in our Constitution, you will see the preamble to our Constitution says that we have a Christian society, Christian heritage. And so if that's in the Constitution, we have to respect that, right? This issue with separation of church and state, people use that globally. That is a specific creature of history in the United States. And we don't have time to go into all of that. Others have spoken about that and can do a better job than I can on that. But in relation to the same-sex marriage issue, let me just say this and say it very clear. We have had the law passed to allow for domestic partnerships. Our Parliament passed it, or didn't pass it, voted against it, and there were the majority of people voted against it. The government was outvoted. I don't know where Mr. McKeeva was when that vote was taken, because he didn't vote. I wonder where he was and how he would have voted on that matter. You should answer that question tonight when you go to your public meeting and talk nonsense. Where were you when that vote was taken? My view is this. People who are gay, lesbian, the LGBTQ movement, we have to love those people. Our country is a country of tolerance. The Bible and Christianity teaches tolerance. Where I draw the line is if that movement wishes now to indoctrinate our children, indoctrinate our young people, change our culture, and impose their views on the rest of us who also have rights, then you're, as the song says, the wonderful country song, then you're on the fighting side of me. We're going to love those people. We don't love what they do. We're going to work with them as a society of tolerance. But if you cross the line, my friends, Mario Ebanks is going to be right there, front and center.
Nice and clear, Kevin.
Mr. Ebanks, just to follow up on that, had you been in Parliament at the time, how would you have voted when that vote was happening?
No, I would have voted against it. I would have joined those wonderful, brave souls who voted against it, and those people who ride the fence because of legal issues and forgot about our Christian heritage and about our Constitution should be ashamed of themselves.
Just curious, why would you have voted no?
I just said to Kevin that it's in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. I realize that as a British overseas territory, we have to walk the line in terms of the UK's global expectations and requirements. But we also should have the right to not have these kinds of things imposed on us. And His Excellency the Governor, who I like very much, then took it upon himself with, I believe, the support of the FCO and probably the encouragement of our own Premier to override us and bring the bill using his reserve powers to bring that bill. And so we have it as we have it. But because of our fundamentals, our Christian heritage, and because of where we should be in the future, I would have voted against it because it's against the principles that I stand for and that the country stands for as enshrined in the Holy Bible and in our constitutional Bible, which is the Constitutional Order of 2009.
Thank you for that. We do have to take a short pause. For those of you outside, I can see you at the intersection, all paused and being safe. It has rained, so it's very slippery out there. Please drive with caution. We'll be right back. Want to join the conversation? I'm going to ask you to WhatsApp. That's 324-1019, 324-1019. And for your weather, it's going to be warm today, a high of 86, a low of 76. Partly cloudy with a 30% chance of showers, which may have just occurred here at the Compass Center anyway. Winds out of the east to northeast, 10 to 15 knots. Your seas are slight to moderate with only 2 to 4 feet. So if you have the day off, go out and enjoy it. It's going to be gorgeous. In the studio today for West Bay West, we have the independent candidate Mario Ebanks. He is running against the incumbent McKeeva Bush, who turned down our invitation to the show. Mario, question for this segment. For the economy, what is one thing you would do to kickstart our post-COVID economic recovery, and how would you consider concessions for developers?
First of all, I am not surprised that Mr. McKeeva has dishonored you and disrespected you, Barry, as a host, and also all women in this country and all of our listeners by not coming this morning. I'm not surprised at that at all. And I'm sure he's probably making note of all of what I'm saying this morning to add to his speech tonight, because he doesn't have any content otherwise, other than throwing around a bunch of foolishness. But anyway, be that as it may, we have a month remaining before Election Day, and the people of West Bay West are excited about change, and I'm willing to be the person on the front lines to bring about that change in West Bay West. In terms of your question of reopening the economy, you know, our economy, thankfully, thanks to God, thanks to the government and the governor and the UK for guiding us through the pandemic in the lockdowns, we are in a good place. Now, I heard Mr. McKeeva on the radio this morning talking about somebody doing a judicial review of the lockdown. I don't know what part of his brain is on this morning, but it certainly had nothing to do with me. So maybe he could rethink that or get his people to give him some information, some facts rather than innuendo. But we have cranes, large cranes dotting the landscape of 7 Mile Beach. Probably have, if you count from the cemetery in Georgetown to the cemetery in West Bay, you probably have a total of about eight cranes. So it's a lot of development going on, a lot of building. Cost of living is high, of course. Our financial services industry is surprisingly very, very strong. The whole world is locked down, but our financial services industry is showing its resilience and doing very well. Government revenue is not as bad as it was predicted to be. The tourism industry, the hospitality industry is where the problem is. And that's why people in that industry are not working. Some are trying to do different jobs. Government is giving $1,500 a month for displaced tourism workers. If I am elected with my team and with West Bay West, we're going to increase that to $2,000 a month. We're going to increase the displaced tourism worker stipend to $2,000 a month until the economy reopens, whether that's the end of this year or whatever. $1,500 a month is a good help. People have been saying to me that if they had to pay rent of $1,000, they got $500 to live on. And so if we have another $1,000, at least they'll have some cushion. But reopening has to be handled very carefully, very safely, very sensibly, and not rush into. What I see as the way to go is this. Cruise tourism is a way off. I heard of a report, a discussion that was held in the U.S. by the ship owners and stuff recently, and they're forecasting June when the ships are going to sail again. That is very, very ambitious. I don't think it's going to happen. But air arrivals, air tourism, we can open slowly and safely. But the important thing about air arrivals and air travel, providing that people have the COVID tests, the PCR tests, the vaccine, and all the other protocols, is that we have something what you call slot management, where not all of the aircraft, not all are coming at the same time. If you go to Owen Roberts Airport before the lockdown, between the hours of 11:30 and 2:30, 3 o'clock, it's jam-packed crazy, especially on weekends, even with the new airport that is open, a beautiful airport. But sometimes that airport is like a ghost town. If we can arrange where we tell the airlines, look, if you want to come, you all can't leave the gateway in the U.S. at the same time and get back there at the same time. We have to do slot management. So we could say that we have one flight every hour for 5 hours during the day. And so you have time for people to get in, get out, no crowding, social distancing, care, and all that, right? So reopening the economy and tourism industry with air travel, that's what I would do, is slot management, working with the airlines, negotiating incentives, and working with them, working with the hotels, having in place proper protocols for safety, and creating those bubbles. We can do this. We can do this. And if elected, Mario Ebanks will promise that we're going to work hard day and night to get the economy reopened, but do it safely, and not throw out in part of nonsense about judicial reviews or that kind of stuff. We're going to work to create that environment. Cruise industry is important too, because I am not the greatest fan of cruise industry, of cruise tourism, but we need it. But we have to also have it sustainable. We have to be careful with the environment, with crowding, with the carrying capacity. So we're going to work with that industry. But the priority would be to stay over tourism, and we're going to do that safely, sensibly, and in the air travel area with slot management, SLOT, slot management.
So let's finish that question then, because the other piece of that is people are thinking to recover the economy. We're going to continue to encourage developers and consider concessions. Your view on concessions, sir?
My view on concessions 101 is as follows. Mr. McKeeva Bush, in his statement this morning on Radio Cayman, is accusing me of promoting income tax. I don't know what side of the bed he woke up this morning, or whenever. But if the person who nominated me for the elections on the 1st of March, Mr. Troy Leacock, has his own views and expresses those in social media, that's not Mario Ebanks. Mr. McKeeva, let me remind you, you're running against Mario Ebanks, not Troy Leacock. I have no agenda for income tax. I never have. But Mr. McKeeva, what you did, and you don't seem to remember, is that in 2012 or thereabouts, you proposed an income tax for this country, and you called it a community enhancement fee. That was an income tax. I was not in government then with him, and he called me because when he proposed it, and there was a lot of discussion out there in the community about income tax that Mr. McKeeva and his government wanted to bring it in. He didn't call it income tax, he called it a community enhancement fee. But the same thing. There was a huge turnout, there's a huge rally up at the Lion Center. The people almost ate them alive up there. He called me about a week or two before that, said, help me with trying to resolve this. I said, me help you? I told you not to mess with it, right? But now he says that I, Mario Ebanks, want to bring in tax. He's the one who brought income tax. I am against it. But he likes to twist facts. He likes to do what the alternative facts is what he operates on. But I am not in favor of income tax. I am, however, in favor of proper environmental and infrastructure impact fees on large developments. But he is not in favor of that. He and his government is in favor of giving concessions to all of these big guys to who want to do these 10, 20, 30-story buildings along this country. He wants to give them concessions or breaks on what they should be paying for income for import duties and the like. But he, at the same time, doesn't want to give breaks to small Caymanian contractors or people who want to improve their homes or build a new home, but he wants to give concessions to those huge developers when we don't need it. Right now, our economy is mushrooming. We can now adjust that dial a little bit, manage the development a little bit, rather than having the floodgates open. So I am against income tax, but I'm also against a proper system of infrastructural and environmental impact fees. Put that money towards the environment protection, put that money towards providing impacts for development such as school children, care, education, social services, NAU, so we can take care of our people. If this government had not been given all these concessions for the last year during COVID, we could have used that money that we could have received to give those people $2,000 a month rather than $1,500. But if I am elected, we're going to do that. We're going to do that within 30 days of election, increasing that displaced tourism worker stipend, but also reopening the economy carefully and cautiously.
Kevin, next question.
Just sticking with the economy, Mr. Ebanks, do you believe that the current minimum wage is effective? And if not, what would you change?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. The minimum wage is a creature of the labor law 2012 revision. The minimum wage, the labor law provides a framework for minimum wage and has a minimum wage advisory committee. That committee got formed and did its work and made its report when I was Director of Labor and Pensions and Ms. Tara Rivers was the Minister for Labor. And at the time, based on the economic analysis, based on the representation of people on the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee, I was not a member, I was just an advisor and a technocrat of the committee, came up with a figure of $6 per hour. $6 per hour. And that was, I think, 2014, I believe it was. So, but the agreement then, when we did that, when they did that, was that every 2 years they would review the minimum wage again. It hasn't been reviewed ever since. And so, shame on Mr. McKeeva, who's been a member of Parliament for 36 years, but for the last 6 years he was not. He didn't say a word about getting that minimum wage advisory committee back together to review it. So I don't think $6 an hour is enough. It's very, very low. But we have to have the process where we go through the advisory committee, they do the economic analysis, and then we adjust it. And I don't want to tell you what I think the minimum wage should be because it needs to be done on economics. But we need to have a livable wage, And the minimum wage is not going to cut it in this country because it's far too expensive. At the same time as minimum wage, we have to look at cutting our costs. There's we have to be careful with this because when you have wage controls, you also have price controls. The two are very, very technical econometrics, but we need to look at the minimum wage and we have to bring it up. $6 is clearly too low. And Mr. McKeeva, wake up.
Now, we do have to take a short pause. Quick program note, I have quite a few questions coming in from the listeners for you, Mr. Ebanks. So we'll go to that next, and may I recommend that we try to tighten our answers so we can get more of the listeners' comments in. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Cayman CrossTalk, everyone. And again, I am getting some WhatsApp messages through. That number is 324-1019. So we'll respect our listeners and give those questions to Mr. Ebanks right now. Again, it is the debate for West Bay West with Mario Ebanks coming in to compete against McKeeva Bush. Mario, this writer says, "Good morning. Please ask Mario to clarify his position on taxing the rich that McKeeva has accused him of."
Well, I guess that individual didn't hear what I just said a while ago, but let me repeat. I have no position on taxing the rich or income tax on anybody else. The only person that I know in this race in West Bay West who has proposed taxing the rich and taxing everybody is Mr. McKeeva Bush, because in 2012 or thereabouts, he brought in something called a community enhancement fee, which was the income tax. I have no plan, and as I said in my earlier comment, if Mr. Troy Leacock, who is a good friend of mine and one of the persons who nominated me on the 1st of March, has a personal view on tax or whatever, that's his views, that's not mine. And it's very, 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 very dangerous for Mr. McKeeva, but not unusual. Very dangerous for him to try to put that on my shoulders. He's the only one who proposed income tax in this country. I am against giving concessions to large developments or large developers when it's not justified. Concessions is only meant to spur or incentivize development, not to give when the economy is booming and development is booming.
Another question from a listener. If someone came to you with a proposal to build a new piece of private infrastructure, in brackets, hotel, condos, etc., close bracket, how would you evaluate whether that project was worth implementing?
That's a huge question. Basically, you follow the law. The development and planning law provides the requirement to make sure that you look at what you call the SWOT analysis of those projects, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You look at the cost benefit. You look at the carrying capacity. But in my plan, Vision 2050, all of those rules and expectations will be outlined so that a developer or investor coming in will know what the rules are. And if I am elected and in the government that I'm a part of, there'll be no talk about who you got to talk to get things done and what you got to pay to get it done. It'll be based on the rules, clear rules that apply to everybody, and fairness, equity is what we're going to be working on and doing.
And I would really strongly suggest responsiveness from all government departments, not ignored emails and inquiries.
Hear, 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 hear.
Okay, another listener question here. Questions for candidate Mario Ebanks. If elected, would you support strengthening, and for some reason they've typed that word in capital letters, strengthening the framework laid out in the Constitution for dealing with MPs whose behavior is unbecoming of Parliament? If yes, how? If no, why not?
The answer is yes. As I said in my declaration statement that was issued before the 1st of March, I am for amending the Constitution to provide for limited term. Limited term means that people cannot be in the Parliament from the cradle to the grave, as some are. My plan is that 20 years maximum. So 20 years is your maximum term as a member of Parliament. Right now we have an 8-year term, or 8 years, 2 terms for the Premier. But my plan is to have 20 years maximum. What that does, it allows for young people to aspire to lead. It also prevents people who've been there forever and who know the system and who can buy their way through to also stay there forever. So 20 years is my plan for a limited term. The other part of that is a recall provision where the citizens can invoke a certain percentage and they can remove somebody from Parliament. In the case of recently what happened to my opponent, if his colleagues in the House fail to do it, the citizens could remove him by a recall provision. And that has to be augmented by a proper code of conduct for parliamentarians. All of that we will do. We can do it. But we need to get Mario E. Ebanks elected in West Bay West with good people across this country, and we can make wonders happen. We can do it, and we will. It's time, it's time, it's time.
And the final one from a listener so far that we have here is, do you believe that accountability is a key issue, not just for this election, but also for the country? Why or why not?
I do agree. It's a key issue. People who put themselves out for election have to be prepared to have their public record under scrutiny. And I have put my public record out. I did my declaration that I was supposed to do. It's in the Commission's office. It's available. And I have always been a person that have been brutally honest. And I have nothing to hide, no skeletons in my closet. Accountability is important, and I support it 100%.
Kevin?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. And the viewer questions that I had, you actually got to, Barry. So we'll move on to some pre-formed questions. Let's switch to education here for a second. Just going through the most recent school inspection reports, Mr. Ebanks, if we look at the secondary schools in West Bay, two there's one that's right down the road from you, Wesleyan. Of the 19, I guess, grading factors, it was weak, and I believe 14 of the 19. What would you do to assist the Wesleyan school in getting that from a place where it's being inspected and it's been given a weak grading to satisfactory or above?
I think that the government over the years has given grants to private schools. I believe it started with Mr. Benson Ebanks, but I know Mr. Truman Bodden, Honorable Truman Bodden, also looked at that when he was leader of government business. Not incentives, but grants to private schools to help them, because the view was that it was more cost effective for private schools to provide education as opposed to government providing it. So you provide some grants to private schools. But in that has to also be giving them proper guidance and inspectors. I used to be a regulator, so I know when you go out to do an inspection, you have to follow the rules, but you also got to give people the assistance, the guidance, and the tools to correct those. That's what a good auditor, a good regulator does. So that's what I would do to help Wesleyan or Triple C school or Catholic school or any of those private schools. Give them the support they need, but give them the guidance. Don't just use the hammer, or don't use a stick, but also use a carrot to say, this is how I'm going to help you. But the other thing I will do is we will integrate public schools so that non-Caymanians can also have an opportunity to go to public school, because if you have a mixing of people who are going to eventually be Caymanians anyhow, let them cross-pollinate, mix, and learn to live together and work together and share skills and maybe up the quality of education. Integration of schools, public schools, is something that I support as well. I know my opponent is going to find something that would say about that and twist that as well, but that's what we're going to do as well.
Sure. And that was going to be my next question, is about that exact issue. So if you don't mind me just following up a bit. So if you were to do that, if you support non-Caymanians being able to go to government schools, what do? We have public schools that are already at capacity. What would we do to, A, just get those number of bodies in there, and then B, make sure that, you know, the students that are already there are still receiving a proper education?
The whole reason for not allowing the children of expats to come to public schools was the same issue of capacity. But in my district, in West Bay West, for example, in West Bay, is actually on the West Bay central side, there's a large parcel of land that behind the existing John Cumber Primary School that has been filled and cleared for probably 15 years. For sports complex, for a civic center, hurricane shelter, and also another school. We need to have more schools. We need to also look at having a shift system where you could also have a morning shift that starts from 8 until, say, 2, and then another one starts from 3 until 7 or 8 in the evening. We can use our facilities more, because after 3 o'clock in the day, most of those schools' facilities are not being used. So we can use that for education. We can do a shift system. We can have proper security, proper transportation for the children, and make sure that we have that. But we also have integration. So we'll be able to have, like I say, cross-pollination, sharing of ideas, and also sharing of talent, moving it. The rising tide will lift all the boats.
And I support what you said about have them get used to living with each other, because there's too much segregation right now. We have different cultures congregating together and alone, and they're not. I mean, when I was a kid, we all had to get along because there were so few of us, and
Yes.
we had to learn to work together.
Yes.
And I would like to see an attempt to heal that and to build more bridges and not less.
Amen.
One from the listeners, can Mario comment on transparency with regards to candidate financial support and confirm who is providing his campaign financial support?
Wonderful question. My financial support for my campaign comes from Mario Ebanks and Lida Lavinia Ebanks, who's my wife. We are funding our own campaign. There are some friends, good friends, personal friends, that have given me some support for the campaign, because they love me, they believe what I'm doing, and they have no desire to get anything back from it except for a better country. So my campaign is being funded by my wife and myself. And I'll tell you this also, when my opponent and his surrogates are running around this country giving out things and having parties and having 3, 4, 5 beer and everything flowing everywhere, ask them where the money for all of this is coming from. and what do those people who are giving that money expect to get in return. In my case, it's my money, I'm investing it or I'm spending it, but it's our money. And we're living within our means, we're living within the budget and the expenses of the campaign, and we're going to do that. But it's our money. Nobody rents or owns Mario Ebanks.
And final minute in the program, gentlemen. This is your elevator pitch, as they like to say. Why should an undecided voter check your name at the ballot box on the 14th of April?
A voter should look at not just what they can get today out of their leaders, but the future. I'm asking people of West Bay West, look at your children, look at your grandchildren. If you have mother, daughter, wife, sister, niece, look at them, look at the rights of those females. I think all women in West Bay West who are voting should vote for Mario Ebanks. I don't have to tell you why, you know why. I also want to especially mention the young people. Every year, for the last 20 years, I have done the award for Mario Ebanks Award for all-around good performance at John Comber Primary School. And every year, as those little boys and girls come up on stage to receive that award from me, which I've sponsored through the school, and I thank the school for giving me that honor. I'm a alumni of the John Comber Primary School. I look at those young people in their eyes, and I see their aspirations, I see their fear, I see their hurt. And I look at them, and I always leave that stage emotional, as I'm getting emotional now. And I say, who's going to stand in the gap for them? Who's going to make their dreams a reality? Who's going to fight their fights? And I said, this year, Mario Ebanks, I'm that man. If not me, who? Here I am. Send me.
And thank you for your advocacy on this program for women. That is so appreciated and so timely. That's all we have for today. You guys drive safe.